Neighbor from hell tries to steal our house. Faces karma when her own actions get her slapped with $200,000 bill. Before we dive in, let's introduce the main characters, the entitled neighbor, whom we'll refer to as N, her spoiled son, who will be called S, and the previous owner of our house, whom we'll call P.O., though their role in this story is limited. Also, keep in mind that from the time we bought the house to today, almost 15 years have passed, so unless stated otherwise, there's quite a gap between most of the events. Let's begin by setting the stage properly, building toward the climax. To do this, I first need to give some background, most of which happened before we bought and moved into the house. I owned a large piece of land, situated down the road from a popular recreational lake in our area. When I say down the road, I mean a fair distance away, even though N's Road is the only access route to multiple lakefront properties and resorts, including the most popular boat dock on this side of the lake. The properties there aren't so expensive that most people can't afford them, but some extremely valuable properties are further down the road, with very wealthy folks passing by all the time. This will matter later. Karen, being quite wealthy herself, owned a sizable chunk of land. When her children grew up, she divided her property into 4 roughly equal sections. She gifted one to her daughter, who, surprisingly, is decent considering her family, and another to S, for whom she built houses roughly to their specifications. On the remaining 2 sections, she built a small convenience store on one of them, her other property, which didn't have her house. That'll be relevant later too? Now, I'm not exactly sure why she did this, but perhaps to avoid future disputes, she transferred deeds to her children for their respective properties. You can probably see where this is headed. Her daughter, who was responsible and respectful, got her part. S, on the other hand, was a party maniac. Everyone in the neighborhood hated him. He threw loud, obnoxious late-night parties nearly every night, keeping everyone awake. Police stations had someone nearby because they were called out so often. It probably didn't help S's entitlement that mommy paid all his bills, water, electric, garbage, all in her name, and they all went to her mailbox. Except for one, since the property was in S's name, so was the property tax. He ignored it, assuming he was paying or just didn't think about it, which wasn't unusual. When police finally showed up to serve a warrant, he didn't come back, and the house was auctioned off. It was in shambles, holes in drywall, a huge hole in the living room floor leading into the garage basement, and the kitchen and subfloor needed total replacement. Mud covered most of the walls. Basically, his irresponsibility and wild parties left the house in what the bank called unlivable condition. Only those willing to pay out of pocket could afford it. Enter P.O., a house flipper, not a millionaire TV1, but a hobbyist who bought cheap houses at auction, fixed them up, and resold. He was retired, flipping houses to stay active. P.O. would buy a place like ours, fix it up himself, then put it back on the market, living off the profit from the previous house. When he finished fixing one up and bought the next, his profits would usually run out by then, and the leftover went into savings. He said it wasn't anything special. We were in the market for a new home but on a tight budget. When we saw our house listed online, it looked perfect, the right size, the right neighborhood, and just down the road from the lake we loved for fishing and boating. It seemed ideal in every way, or so it appeared. We were concerned about the price since it wasn't listed yet, but decided to check it out anyway. We drove past and saw P.O. working on it. Stopping to say hi, we asked about the price. He explained he planned to fix it up and sell, and his realtor had just added it to the website to streamline the process when he was ready. We had a friendly chat, and we told him we'd be willing to buy it at a reasonable price given its condition and the work he'd already done. He was about halfway finished but declined our offer. He had multiple offers, and he felt it wouldn't be right to sell yet. Instead, he told us to call if he changed his mind. We left our number, and less than 2 weeks later, he called us. His sister had fallen ill in another state, and he wanted to go be with her. The house wasn't up to code, but if we could find a way to buy it, he'd be happy to sell at a fair price. We quickly sought financing. Thanks to a realtor friend, we found a bank willing to lend us the money, with a condition: we had 2 weeks to bring the house up to code, or the bank could default and auction it off. P.O. offered some help, though he couldn't do much physically. He explained exactly what needed fixing and how much it would cost. We took out a loan for twice what P.O. wanted, and he returned the difference. We used that for repairs, which were nearly complete, just some wiring, flooring, drywall repairs, and removing decomposing wallpaper. Finally, after months of work, our dream home was ready. It still had a few minor issues, but we moved in. We weren't even fully settled when Ann showed up to introduce herself during our limited moving window. P.O. had warned us repeatedly about Ann's entitled attitude, but at first, she was very friendly, and we didn't understand why P.O. was warning us so much. Then, she casually explained in a very kind and sympathetic tone that the house actually belonged to her, giving us just 30 days to vacate. She said she felt sorry for us because we'd been scammed, but insisted P.O. had no right to sell it. It was her house, and she believed we were trespassing. You can imagine our horror. We had spent months fixing up this house, pouring time, effort, and money into it, only for her to claim it was hers. We thanked her for the explanation and said we'd talk to the bank and P.O. to sort it out. We verified with the bank and realtor, P.O. was the legal owner, and she was mistaken or lying. P.O. told us she'd accused him of stealing the house multiple times after he bought it at auction, and she'd harassed him constantly. Everyone confirmed the same story. We even visited the courthouse and confirmed our name was on the deed. As this was happening, neighbors told us S had finally been released from prison, with nowhere to go. She let him move back in, but didn't want him living with her, so she rented him an apartment above her store. She forbade wild parties and made him run the store when she was busy. But even then, he kept double charging customers and pocketing extra cash. We noticed it, went to her, and told her about it. She dismissed us, saying we were imagining things, and told us to get lost politely. We shared the info with neighbors, and it took years for some of them to even talk to us, but after the rumors about theft spread and Mr. Peacekeeper, the neighborhood's unofficial peacekeeper, exposed the store's practices, their reputation collapsed. He went door to door, showing receipts, warning neighbors, and making sure everyone knew the truth. The store's profits plummeted, and after a few years, they closed permanently. The neighborhood's perception of us improved as people realized the truth about the thefts and dishonesty. But that's not even the worst part. To get to the climax, I need to mention that Ann is extremely nosy. She watches us constantly, peering through windows or coming outside to walk her dog or do yard work. We aren't on great terms, and we don't like being stared at all the time. We planned to install a small privacy fence, and we explained to Ann that we'd do so. She refused outright, but we offered to discuss the details, color, shape, location, to ensure she wouldn't be bothered or see something she found unappealing. We decided to set the fence just a foot over our property line, to avoid disputes. Before S went to jail, we had paid for a deed and property map. To our surprise, a third of our land was claimed by Ann. She had a small shed and garden there, and a line of trees cut through our property, which she claimed as her own. When we pointed this out, she freaked out again, calling us liars and thieves. We didn't care much about that land since we'd lived here for years, thinking it was hers. To make things easier, we offered to sell or trade that section. There was an inconvenient corner that would be easier to manage if it extended a little. But she flatly refused, saying she'd never pay for something that was hers and accused us of stealing it. Since then, a huge property dispute has been ongoing. Our area is very rural, with ancient deeds and landmarks, big oaks, large rocks, used to describe boundaries, often imprecise and sometimes long gone. Many property lines are disputed, and laws are strict about it. For instance, a few years ago, someone won a lawsuit over just 0.1 acres and received over $1 million. Our own property lines, though recently set, are still complicated. She had apparently bribed a surveyor, or so we suspect, because the boundary line she received claimed her land stretched within about a foot of our house. That was amusing, though it had no bearing on the land she's actually trying to steal. Whenever we manage to find a surveyor, Ann casually approaches, mentioning she's already had her part surveyed and hinting at disputes. That instantly scares off anyone willing to do the job, knowing what it could mean for them. Oh, and I forgot to mention, the survey markers from the original bank survey, when we bought the house, mysteriously disappeared before we moved in. We still don't know how that happened. Now, hiring a surveyor costs a lot, more than the land itself, if we can find someone willing. They've all quoted us ridiculous prices, knowing the stakes. We're saving up to finally settle this once and for all. But that's where the story's current climax begins. A few months ago, a terrible storm knocked down a tree on the disputed land, right near the road. The tree crushed part of our neighbor's property, and, worse, totaled a new sports car that was passing by. No one was hurt, but the cleanup took days. During that time, we received a bill for over $200,000, more than our house and land were worth after repairs. Here's the malicious compliance part. Most home insurance doesn't cover damage to other people's property. If it's on public land, that's on you. If you could have prevented it, like cutting down a dangerous tree, you're responsible. So when we got the bill from a wealthy individual's insurance company claiming we owed for the car, we called them politely and explained that the tree wasn't on their property. They asked questions and promised to investigate. About a week later, they sent us a letter with a copy of the deed, a property map, and the tree circled, right on our land. They demanded full payment within 30 days or threatened legal action. At that point, we called again, reiterating it wasn't on our property. Their agent argued that someone would have to be brain dead not to see it was on our land, and that it was impossible anyone would believe otherwise. We gave them the contact info of the surveyor PO hired, and they said they would look into it. But we never heard another word. We knew the consequences I'd mentioned earlier. If the surveyor admitted to accepting a bribe or making a mistake, he'd lose his license or have to leave the country. Later, we checked in with the insurance, and their notes confirmed the property was disputed, and the surveyor's report backed us up. Since PO hired him, and we weren't disputing the results, the insurance accepted that the damage was not their client's responsibility. We paid the bill, no problem. They weren't happy, but it was what we expected. From then on, we kept quiet about the dispute. We're still saving up for a proper survey to reclaim our land. But for now, it's more about principle. As for Anne, she definitely looks at us differently now, probably because she knows she's lost her claim. It's just free land to us, how could she complain? She might spread rumors, but most neighbors now see her for what she is, especially after discovering S was stealing from everyone under her nose, and she did nothing. We're just sitting back, watching her burn her reputation down with her own lies and schemes. Can't wait to see what happens next. And here's a little bonus: while planning a privacy fence, we decided to install an invisible dog fence instead, electrical wiring buried underground, with collars that beep and mildly shock if the dogs get too close. We didn't believe in shock collars, so we had to test it first. One of us held it, and it left a little tingle, nothing painful. The idea was to train the dogs to stay within the yard without a fence. We wanted to avoid their getting close to Anne's property, which she obviously thought we were marking out. One day, she ran over the invisible wire with her lawnmower, more than 5 feet beyond her claimed property line, destroying her mower, which she had to replace. The best part? Since it was way over her land, she couldn't blame us. She tried spreading rumors, but it didn't go far. She never even asked us to replace her mower, probably knowing how we'd respond. LOL. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the story. I've got another one about how my mother's malicious compliance cost her company over $100 million and shut down her entire department permanently, but it's late now. I'll tell that one another night. Stay tuned. _